Ladies and gentlemen, I appreciate y'all being here.
Testing the game.
Let's go.
Oh, yeah.
No BS, OBS, camera zoomed in, and the chat is lit. Stay tuned in. Zach Morris got the attention like the cool kids. I do's this, homie, I thought you knew this. If you didn't, now you do, I had to prove it. Thanks for watching. What's everybody's favorite topic? Leave a comment in the chat and please
Refrain from gossip.
stop it. If you hating, there's no debating. Promise, I'm going up like Hakeem. I can't wait to block you. Sorry, nah, dog, cause this a party. Get your popcorn ready, we about to get it started. I'm super grateful. Thank you all for being with me. How we looking? Am I good?
Sitting pretty.
I'm elated that you would take time to kick it with me. And I ain't famous, so I'm grateful for the subs you get then. Shout out to Shadow, I know my guy is always listening. And I appreciate the bits. Fire emoji, pimpin'. Let's get it. I'ma give you what you came to see. Just hit that follow button for me and we can proceed. An OG, Child's Hot, class of '03. Shout out to everybody back home and those that's in the stream. Love y'all.
Testing the game. Oh, yeah.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back. Wake up. Hey. Good dog, good dog. I know some of y'all are just waking up. Must have been a late night. And for anybody that's here and hanging out, appreciate you. For real, for real, for real. I hope everybody had a very happy Easter. I had a low-key Easter. Started out great, and then I just kind of faded out. Kind of needed a day to recharge. We're with you on a Monday. A&T live in the chat. Bam, bam. Appreciate you. Yes, to that question and point. In Norway, although not a very religious people, they do take advantage of the religious holidays. And so Easter is one where everybody loves to celebrate. I think typically most people travel, they go to other places, they go to their cabins, they ski. And so it's an extended holiday. We've been on kind of official break. We have red days, which is like everything gets shut down and you're on vacay since Thursday. So yeah, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. One time for that. But yeah. And I appreciate you stopping by. I think you're in the gym. If you're in the gym, get it, man. Get it. Every day's a holiday for this guy. That's right. Every day just a holiday. I forget where that's from, but that's true. But nonetheless, I'm happy to be here. Yep, that's right. Good one. I love that the sound effects are working a little bit better today. They seem to be right on cue. I don't know why they weren't like that the other day, but hey, we'll take it. Not for nothing, I'm very happy to have made some additional improvements to the stream. You won't recognize it or really appreciate it. However, as we've been discussing, we're trying to do a little bit more, a little bit better every time. And so I ordered a dummy battery for the camera. Not that you would have been aware of it, but I've had to charge my battery every time I go live so as to ensure it doesn't go away while we're all together. And now I've got it plugged directly into the wall socket. So hopefully, fingers crossed, this thing doesn't cut out. But so far, so good. It is the dummy replacement, so it must work. Otherwise, we wouldn't be live. So happy about that. And I've got a couple of fun things for you all today. I put in some time this morning. As I was waiting for people to kind of get up and get fresh, I wanted us all to be here together. And so I thought, what could I do to make, thank you, Shadow. What could I do to make this stream a bit more fun and engaging, again, in keeping with that theme? So at some point, and Ant, you might want to stick around for this if you're still with me, bro. It's a bit of a movie quiz, so I think you'll dig it. But before we do, some selfless promo. Not yesterday, but the day before, I think, I spent the morning and better part of the mid-afternoon finishing a new song that I'm quite proud of. Now, first of all, disclaimer, it's not PG, okay? So it's not meant for anyone under the age of 18. We're a bit explicit. However, I like it, and if you're into hip-hop and rap, I do encourage you to check it out. It's available for listening on my SoundCloud, and that link can be can be found. You're playing out loud in the gym. I don't have headphones. Awesome. Shout out to Premiere back home. You can see my SoundCloud tag on the right or left hand side of your screen, depending on how it views. But simply Ryan M. Barber. I think almost all of my channels and pages are my name, Ryan M. Barber. So there you go. But the new song, check this out. Huh? That's the artwork. That's all I can show and play on the live stream, I'm afraid, because of copyright. I don't have the rights to the record. Shout out to Scooty, my guy. Welcome to the stream.
Thank you. You're far too kind.
Glad you're here with us, man. First time chatter. Yeah, there goes the fan base. But no, so listen, the remix, it's really cool. And I encourage you to first listen to the original composition. It's a Lil Wayne record featuring DMX, RIP, produced by Swiss Beats. And again, if you're not a fan of hip hop, if you're not a fan of rap, then listen to something else. But if you dig hip hop and rap as I do, and I certainly love Lil Wayne, then the original record is dope. It's called Can't Nobody. And that's how you can find it on Spotify, YouTube, pretty much anywhere. And the first time I heard it, I thought, man, he killed it. Wayne did, they all did. But I thought I could maybe do a rendition. And so I did that. I attempted my version. Now, one of the things that I'm most particularly proud of in this song is I take from Lil Wayne's flow and cadence. So one of the things that Lil Wayne is well known for are his remixes, and he's super incredible. And oftentimes when he does a remix, he'll take the artist's flow and cadence and make it his own, and sometimes even improve upon it. And so that's what I wanted to do. Not improve upon it, but do it my way, R&B's way. And so that's what came out. So don't pay any mind to the context of the song or the lyrics. It's all just jest and wordplay, as it typically is with me. But if you listen to the original, I think you'll more deeply appreciate what I was able to do with it, both in my rhythm and pocket and in some of the things that I say, because I take them from the original song and then just kind of flip it. So it's a long way of saying, hey, please listen to my music. I'm also a bit pleased with the quality of this one. One thing that I do sometimes, as I'm able, particularly when I'm remixing or referencing another song, is to take the actual mastered version of the original song and put it in my Pro Tools session, so that when I'm mixing, I kind of reference the quality of the original version, and then I just try to do little things to mirror that a bit, and I'm afraid it always kind of falls short, but I'm getting a little better every time, perhaps. And so thank you to Anthony for the kind words that he shared, and some other people conveyed some similar sentiments with regards to the quality. I don't think anybody super loves the lyrics per se, but that's fine. Again, I just do it to have fun with it. So if you do end up on my SoundCloud or YouTube, it's on my YouTube as well. That's also posted for you. Thanks in advance, I guess. All right. In the hopes that some of y'all are still here before we get into today's reading. I know that's, for some, that's why you're here. For others, you're just here to show a little support. Either way, I'm super grateful. One more time, thank you for being here. We don't super love the lyrics. I know, Mom. In fact, that's why I kind of say, save your breath, Mama. The B is for the best, Mama, because I knew you wouldn't love that. It's actually a double entendre there. Mama being you specifically, and if you hear the message when I speak to you, but then Mama could also be referred to a female that I'm talking to. And that's what Lil Wayne said in his version, and that's why I did that. But I knew, Mom, respectfully, that you wouldn't love the lyrics. So again, it's not really for you, but that's all right. One day, I'll have a couple songs that I think you'll like. And I hope there's at least one or two out there already, but if not, so be it. It's art and it's subjective. At least you taught me to be a creative spirit. I'm just pursuing that. So there you go. All right, let's get into this. I had the privilege, yeah. Thank you, chat. I had the privilege of watching a movie a couple days ago, and before I tell you what the movie is, I'd like you to guess. So I've created a bit of a little game for you. Let's see if you can guess them. Now, for those of you that know the movie that I've seen, don't cheat, because some of you know for a fact. One of you might be in the chat. We watched it together. Hey, but here it comes. And
what she said.
Unfiltered. No, but that would be a wonderful plug. In fact, we're going to do a whole stream dedicated to that. Maybe you and I can brainstorm and we can talk about that. And if anybody doesn't know it, my mother is incredible, to say the least, but a multi-time Emmy award-winning television producer. Yeah, no big deal. But she's also an incredible filmmaker, and her most recent project is titled Unfiltered. I think it's the truth about oysters. I'm not sure what the tail end of that is, but it is a wonderful film, and it's currently on the circuit. It's being featured at multiple film festivals. So shout out to her, and I'm hopeful, and I mean this in all sincerity, I'm hopeful she gets the Oscar. Respect. For real. For real. We'll talk more, but shout out to that. Okay, here it comes. The game. You ready? And it's going to be super easy for some of you, but go ahead and tell me what the film is that I watched based on these emojis. Come on. And I support that. Truly unfiltered. Let's get sloshed, huh? Trying to think of words that relate to oceanic marine life. All right, come on. There it is. It was too easy. Give it up for A&T. He was the first to guess it. He was the first. It was Avatar 2. I think it's called The Way of Water. Yeah. So shout out to Ant. Well done. I knew it would be too easy for you. Stay tuned, though, because there's one more guess in just a second. But let's talk about Avatar for just a brief second. I think that Moby Dick. Yeah. I think I'm going to be a little bit, critiqued for this. First of all, look, James Cameron, multi-million-dollar film, etc., etc. I think we all know it's great. I'm not going to spoil it for anybody that hasn't seen it. Before I go further, let me say, please watch it. It's a wonderful movie. It's great. However, okay, this is where we start to toe the line, I think, with some of y'all. That's true. Shadow, before I go further, pause. We all used to play a game in the theaters, and if you didn't get the full title, you didn't kind of get it. The game's rigged. It's all good. Everybody shares in this. We're in this together. Okay? Come on, team. Let's get back to it. So I had the privilege of watching Avatar 2, and thank you to Shadow and Caesar if you're in here or will see this. Hey.
Thank you. Far too kind.
Sincerely, because thanks to y'all, I was able to watch this, and I watched it with someone who's very close to me, and I had a wonderful time with her as well. So if you're here, thank you for being with me. But the film, I feel like it's the same movie. Am I wrong? It was basically the same film. If you've seen Avatar 1, you've kind of seen Avatar 2. Now, let me pause here. It was beautiful. The cinematics, the storyline, yes. The soundtrack. I mean, it's a wonderful film. But come on, they didn't really do too much different than the first movie. And shout out to Chooch, she remembers the film too. And the AMC, we should get a sponsorship plug. But why? Why didn't the movie do more? And let me say this, it's a very long film. Why I enjoyed the time and the company I was sharing. This film, while it was 3+ hours, could have easily been cut in half and been the same movie, in my opinion, in my humble opinion, one time. So, I don't know. And then I feel like, I think they left it on a cliffhanger or an open end to give you another sequel. And I'm fairly confident in saying that I think that sequel might have already been completed and we're just kind of now milking this thing. But look, see the movie. It's good. It's long. Strap in. That's what she said. But seriously, couldn't it have been shorter? You didn't see it in theaters. Yes, I knew that, and fair enough. Not seeing it in theaters, I think, would have diminished things a bit for me. But no, come on. It was the same movie. And just in a slightly different location. You know what I mean? So anyway, I'm going to get off the high horse now. I did see it. Thank you for those that empowered us to do so. It was great, but at the same time, I had to get that off my shoulders a little bit because, come on, should have been better. Should have been different. Should have been more. Should have been other. I mean, if you've seen Avatar 1, you've basically seen Avatar 2. I respect Clint Eastwood for that. I really do. I really do. So there you go. Now, how about this? A sleeper pick. This film I have seen the cover art for at least a dozen times. And to your point, yeah, I'm with you, Ant. They could do better. I could probably come up with one or two, but you're right. We're hard pressed to do that. Now, yes, John Wick, hey, 2 times. I haven't seen the newest installment, but I look forward to that. Maybe I'll give you my 2 cents. But you're absolutely right. John Wick is basically the same movie over and over and over again. But that's kind of what you want. With Avatar, I mean, damn, they took only, 12, 13 years to make the sequel? I thought they were going to do a little bit more. And granted, I've seen some of the behind the scenes. They go into water, the way they shot it. It's amazing from a work of art's sake. Now, let me also say this. The first one was groundbreaking because it was so new in so many facets. You know what I mean? We had never really experienced anything like that before. Now, we're just less impressed. So, I don't know. All right. But my sleeper pick. I've seen this artwork or the movie poster on streaming platforms at least a couple times. I want to say like a half a dozen before I made the selection. And I was into getting to know. And so I watched it. And I watched it this morning. And I was so impressed. I was so impressed by the film, and I encourage you all to watch it for different reasons. And this is a great group to be having this conversation because you all will appreciate this movie for slightly different reasons. So we're not going to do the emojis this time. And again, it's going to be very easy, so don't expect it to be a difficult quiz. But tell me what the film was by this sound. Huh? Come on. First on the button. Who's got it? Give it to me, chat. What's the film? And if you didn't hear the sound effect, then there it is. Give it up. Shadow wins that one. It certainly was. It was Tetris. And it was great. It really, really was. Close second, Ant. Hey, we'll give you one time for that. Stupid lag. Yeah, put it on the lag. That's all right. You got to be quicker than that, baby. It is what it is. You got the first one. Come on. You boys will share the trophy. Jim Wi-Fi. Tetris. Great film. I think it's an Apple product. Don't quote me on that, but that's what I think. So if you don't find it on your Netflix or wherever you stream, check Apple if you have that. Otherwise, I don't know, Redbox it or wait for it to come out on another platform. But it was amazing. It was fantastic. Now, it is the story of Tetris, not so much how it was created, though they do touch on that, but really it was about how we all, primarily as Americans, came to have Tetris in our life. My first, encounter of Tetris was with the Nintendo Game Boy. And certainly that's made mention of and has a profound impact in the film. But the concept in the story, and this doesn't give anything away, is that I think his name is Hank. This guy, Hank, he basically tries to buy the license to Tetris from Moscow directly. And then he negotiates licensing with Nintendo in Japan and also in the US, and it's just a wonderful film, and I think it's all based on a true story. And to get that insight, and then because again it's video game theme, and the directors and editors do a wonderfully creative job of like imposing like 8-bit cinematic, superimposed titles and things, so it has like a video game element at times. Hank, spoiler, damn it. Nah, for real though, it's a great film. I did not expect to appreciate it and love it as much as I did. I can't say it's as good as Avatar because Avatar is epic, right? But from just a film fan standpoint, this one has a lot going for it. So check it out, Tetris. I'm gonna leave you with that. Hey, and great job on the guessing. Y'all did pretty well. One more time. All right. This is a longer one. That's also.
That's what she said.
Okay. So I gave you a couple of games to whet your palate before we get into what so many of you came to see and hear. So the film's like the game itself. Don't expect anything. Next thing you know. Exactly. And Tetris really is a wonderful game. And I thought there was like a certain degree of proficiency, and then someone showed me how good they really were, and it really is a skill game as you get nice with it. So respect to the Tetris heads. But the film, watch the movie. It's wonderful. If you watch it and you hate it, come talk to me and I'll apologize, because I don't think you will. I stake my reputation on it. However light that might be. All right. Y'all know what time it is. Now, before we get into this thing, I want to share with you that it's a bit interesting how the book is structured, in that I thought, just like what I want to say, a normal book, but maybe a traditional book, it goes progressively through chapters, chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3. And it looked to have done that. And I thought the preface was titled The Voice of Reason. But now we've reached a point where the chapters restart. So according to the book, we are now on The Voice of Reason 2, chapter 1. So I don't know how I'm gonna have to label these things going forward, but I can't say chapter 9. I think that's where we would have been. So just to give you that insight, according to what the book says, you probably can't read that. The Voice of Reason 2, chapter 1. So that's where we're going to start. And I'm going to give everybody the overview and rundown, just like we have been. I hope that that's helpful. It's always helpful to me to remember, oh yeah, that's what happened in the last chapter. But before we do, I've got a slightly better transition for you, just to kind of keep you on your toes. Everybody ready? First of all, can we get a little bit of a mood lighting for Geralt and friends? Yeah, that feels right, huh? And then what else can we do to make it cute and fun and whimsical? I got you.
Toss a coin to your witcher, oh valley of plenty, oh valley of plenty, oh.
Hope you enjoyed that. One more again.
Toss a coin to your witcher, oh valley of plenty, oh valley of plenty, oh.
Hey! So for those that don't know, that is a snippet of a song taken from the Netflix series. In the series, and I'm sure we'll meet him at some point here. It's, again, not a spoiler alert, but that's the Bard. And if you're a fan of Dungeons and Dragons, any role-playing game, you know that the Bard is a class that typically plays multiple instruments and or sings. And usually it's the Bard that offers power-ups or buffs to the party when they do it. So one more again for the sake of...
Coin to your witcher, oh valley of plenty, oh valley of plenty.
I'm a fan. I'm sure if I was cast in this world, that would probably be my role, unfortunately. It's a tough class to play in the gaming world. I think, anyway. You don't really get to participate in the battles so much. You just kind of buff up your party. But anyway, shout out to the Bard. So, what happened last time? Well, if you recall, Geralt the Witcher, he basically broke the curse and was able to restore the princess back to her normal state. One time for Geralt. And the way in which he was able to do that, first of all, before the epic battle scene, he drinks his vials, and he tells you what's in them, but come on, what are we talking about? He drinks his vials, and then he turns into like Super Witcher, if you will, okay? His pupils dilate, they turn all black, he gets these lines across his face, and now he's ready to go. And the Striga makes it out of her crypt, and oh boy, poor boy, I forget what his name is off the top of my head. It starts with an O maybe. Well, he's there, and he basically tells the Witcher that he doesn't want him to kill the princess or even break the curse. He loves Ada. Ada being the girl's mother, the queen, and also the king's sister, as it so happens to be. And through this dialogue between this guy, and again, I forget what his title is. It doesn't matter. I'll tell you why it doesn't matter in a second. Him and Geralt are talking, right? And through this dialogue, he tells Geralt that he believes, one, it wasn't him that cursed the princess. He wouldn't do that. He believes it was the princess's mother. So that's interesting. I don't know if that comes into play later on, but that's something to remember. So maybe grandma's a bit of a hater. I don't know. Okay. Then Geralt ties this guy up because he's going to use the guy as bait to draw out the Striga. Okay? And that's what happens. And just before the Striga comes out of the crypt, he unties Buddy. Now, Buddy breaks out. He freaks out because he knows what's coming. So he doesn't stick around to kind of play the game the way Geralt designed it. He jets. Well, the Striga makes short work of old boy. And you can hear his screams howling through the crypt. So I'm pretty sure he gets torn to pieces. R.I.P. though. And then Geralt gears up and he toes up with the Striga. And it's a cool little battle. And in the end, I think they both take hits. And what he's able to do is use the Striga's like fear. And I think more accurately, it's the evil and hate that went into the spell to create the Striga that he's able to somehow harness from the Striga and use against it. So he makes this monster, this demon, this creature feel the things that were put into the spell to cause her transformation. And so that's deep. Anyway, it basically like paralyzes her or puts her down for a while. And then what he has to do is climb into the crypt and spend the night. And he does that. I think he works a little bit of magic on the tomb to make it safe or whatnot, but he does. And then in the morning, he wakes up, climbs out of the sarcophagus, and she's a little girl again. So he breaks the spell one time for Geralt. He does it. And not for nothing, but he goes to check on the girl to figure out, if she's alive. And she cuts him. She cuts him pretty deep in the throat. But I think she just has regular hands. And so it's just her nails. I don't think it's a fatal wound. Anyway, he gets taken to, the infirmary, if you will. And they bandage him up. And he goes to sleep. And that's the end of the first, book. You can't call it a chapter anymore. It's the end of the first stanza, the first installment. There's probably a word for it. It's just not coming to me. So how am I doing, Chad? I know some of you were here for that. Pretty good. I think that about sums it up. All right. Well,
Thank you. Far too kind.
that's how I feel about it. So without further ado, take a sip of my concoction here. Doing good. Appreciate you, Ma. And I'm very excited to figure out what happens next. So if you're still with me, thank you. Get cozy. Last time it was chamomile tea. Maybe today it'll be, ginger or some kind of mixed berry. Whatever you're into. Here we go. The Voice of Reason 2, Chapter 1. Geralt. He raised his head, torn from sleep. The sun was already high and forced blinding golden rays through the shutters, penetrating the chamber with tentacles of light. The Witcher shaded his eyes, and with his hand, in an unnecessary, instinctive reflex, which he had never managed to shake off, all he needed to do, after all, was narrow his pupils into vertical slits. "It's late," said Neneki, opening the shutters. "You've slept in. Off with you, Iola." The girl sat up suddenly and linked out of bed to take her mantle from the floor. Geralt felt a trickle of cool saliva on his shoulder, where her lips had been a moment ago. "Wait," he said hesitantly. She looked at him, quickly turned away. She had changed. There was nothing of the water nymph in her anymore. Nothing of the luminous, chamomile-scented apparition she had been at dawn. Her eyes were blue, not black, and she had freckles on her nose, her neckline, her shoulders. They weren't unattractive. They suited her complexion and reddish hair. But he hadn't seen them at dawn, when she had been in his dream. With shame, he realized he felt resentment towards her. Resentment that she hadn't remained a dream, and that he would never forgive himself for it. "Wait," he repeated. "Iola, I wanted..." "Don't speak to her, Geralt," said Neneki. "She won't answer you anyway. Off with you, Iola." Wrapped in her mantle, the girl pattered towards the door, her bare feet slapping the floor. Troubled, flushed, awkward. No longer reminding him, in any way, of Yennefer. "Neneki," he said, reaching for his shirt. "I hope you're not annoyed that... You won't punish her, will you?" "Fool," the priestess snorted. "You've forgotten where you are. This is neither a hermitage nor a convent." This is a tough one. It's Melitil, I'm guessing. It's Melitil's temple. Our goddess doesn't forbid our priestesses anything. Almost. You forbade me to talk to her. I didn't forbid you, but I know it's pointless. Iola doesn't speak. What? She doesn't speak. She's taken a vow. It's a sort of sacrifice through which... Oh, what's the point of explaining? You wouldn't understand anyway. You wouldn't even try to understand. I know your views on religion. No, don't get dressed yet. I want to check your neck. She sat on the edge of the bed and skillfully unwound the linen bandages wrapped thickly around the Witcher's neck. He grimaced in pain. As soon as he had arrived in Allender, Neneki had removed the painfully thick stitches of shoemaker's twine with which they had stitched him with in Wisdom, opened the wound, and dressed it again. The results were clear. He had arrived at the temple almost cured, if perhaps a little stiff. Now he was sick again and in pain. But he didn't protest. He'd known the priestess for years and knew how great was her knowledge of healing, how rich and comprehensive her pharmacy was. A course of treatment at Melitel's temple could do nothing but good. Neneki felt the wound, washed it, and began to curse. He already knew this routine by heart. She had started on the very first day and had never failed to moan when she saw the marks left by the Princess of Wisdom's talons. "It's terrible to let yourself be slashed by this by an ordinary strigger. Muscles, tendons. She only just missed your carotid artery." "Great Melitel! Geralt, what was happening to you? How did she get so close? What did you want with her? To mount her?" He didn't answer. He smiled faintly. "Don't grin like an idiot." The priestess rose and took a bag of dressings from the chest of drawers. Despite her weight and low stature, she moved swiftly and gracefully. "There's nothing funny about it. You're losing your reflexes, Geralt." "You're exaggerating." "I'm not exaggerating at all." Neneki spread a greenish mush smelling sharply of eucalyptus all over the wound. "You shouldn't have allowed yourself to get wounded, but you did. And very seriously at that. Fatal, even. And even with your exceptional powers of regeneration, it'll be months before your neck is fully mobile again. I warn you, don't test your strength by fighting an agile opponent during that time." "Thank you for the warning." Perhaps you could give me some advice, too. How am I supposed to live in the meantime? Rally a few girls, buy a cart, and organize a traveling house of ill repute? Neneke shrugged, bandaging his neck with quick, deft movements. Am I supposed to give you advice and teach you how to live? Am I your mother or something? Right, that's done. You can get dressed now. Breakfast's waiting for you in the refectory. Hurry up, or you'll have to make it yourself. I don't intend to keep the girls in the kitchen till midday. Where will I find you later? In the sanctuary? No. Neneke got up. Not in the sanctuary. You're a welcome guest here, Witcher. But don't hang around the sanctuary. Go for a walk. I'll find you myself. Fine. That's chapter 1 of section 2. So Neneke Melitels. It just reads differently. You know what I mean? When you see letters put together that you don't often see, it's like, what is that? Melitels. Okay, everybody happy? We good for another one? That's what she said.
That's what she said.
Okay, it looks like this Voice of Reason only has one more chapter, so I guess that's cool. We're gonna hit these things as they come, and I don't know what to call them. Anybody got ideas? Chooch, maybe? They're not chapters. They're like sections, or maybe shorts, or I don't know. I need a good word for what these things are. Help me out, chat, one time. All right, while you're coming up with whatever the proper word is, Google's your friend, bruv. I'm going to read you chapter 2 of this section. Here we go. Geralt strolled, for the 4th time, along the popular alley, which led from the gate to the dwellings by the sanctuary and main temple block, which merged into the sheer rock. After brief consideration, he decided against returning to shelter and turned towards the gardens and outbuildings. Umpteen priestesses, clad in gray working garments, were toiling away, weeding the beds and feeding the birds in the henhouses. The majority of them were young, or very young, virtually children. Some greeted him with a nod or a smile in passing. He answered their greetings, but didn't recognize any of them. Although he often visited the temple, once or even twice a year, he never saw more than 3 or 4 faces he knew. The girls came and went, becoming oracles in other temples, midwives and healers specializing in women's and children's diseases, wandering druids, teachers, or governesses. But there was never a shortage of priestesses, although from all over, even the remotest regions. Melitel's temple in Elendar was well known and enjoyed well-earned fame. The cult of Melitel was one of the oldest and, in its day, one of the most widespread cults from time immemorial. Practically every pre-human race and every primordial nomadic human tribe honored a goddess of harvest and fertility, a guardian of farmers and gardeners, a patroness of love and marriage. Many of these religions merged into the cult of Melitel. We've got some banning happening in the chat. Not sure what all that is, but I appreciate you, Shadow. Do you, baby? Shout out to the mob. Episodes. I like episodes. That's what we'll call them. All right. So we've got here a cult. Time standing cult. Here we go. Time, which was quite pitiless towards other religions and cults, effectively isolating them and forgotten, rarely visited little temples and oratories buried amongst urban buildings, had proved merciful to Melitel. She did not lack either followers or sponsors. In explaining the popularity of the goddess, learned men who studied this phenomenon used to hark back at the pre-cults of Great Mother, Mother Nature, and pointed to the links with nature's cycle, with the rebirth of life and the other pardon me. This is another big word. Grandiloquently. And other grandiloquently named phenomena. Geralt's friend, the troubadour Dandelion, who enjoyed a reputation as a specialist in every possible field, looked for a simpler explanation. Melitel's cult, he deduced, was a typical woman's cult. Melitel was, after all, the patroness of fertility and birth. She was the guardian of midwives. And a woman in labor has to scream. Apart from the usual cries, usually promising never to give herself to any bloody man ever again in her life, a woman in labor has to call upon some God heap for help. And Melitel was perfect. And since women gave birth and will continue to give birth, the goddess Melitel, the poet proved, did not have to fear for her popularity. Geralt. Neneki, I was looking for you. Me? The priestess looked at him mockingly. Not Iola? Iola too, he admitted. Does that bother you? Right now, yes. I don't want you to get in her way and distract her. She's got enough to get ready and pray for if something's gonna come of this trance. I've already told you, he said. I don't want any trance. I don't think a trance will help me in any way. While I, Neneki winced, don't think a trance will harm you in any way. I can't be hypnotized. I have immunity. I'm afraid for Iola. It might be too great an effort for her a medium. Iola isn't a medium or a mentally ill soothsayer. That child enjoys the goddess's favor. Don't pull silly faces, if you please. As I said, your view on religion is known to me. It's never particularly bothered me, and no doubt it won't bother me in the future. I'm not a fanatic. You have the right to believe that we're governed by nature and the force hidden within her. You can think that the gods, including my Melitel, are merely a personification of this power, invented for simpletons so they can understand it better. Accept its existence. According to you, that power is blind. But for me, Geralt, faith allows you to expect what my goddess personifies from nature. Order, law, goodness, and hope. I know. If you know, then why are your reservations about this trance? What are you afraid of? That I'll make you bow your head to a statue and sing canticles? Geralt, we simply sit together for a while, you, me, and Iola, and see if the girl's talents will let her see into the vortex of power surrounding you. Maybe we'll discover something worth knowing. And maybe we won't discover anything at all. Maybe the power and fate surrounding you won't choose to reveal themselves to us. Will remain hidden and incomprehensible. I don't know. But why shouldn't we try? Because there's no point. I'm not surrounded by any vortex or fate. And if I were, why the hell would I delve into it? Geralt, you're sick. Injured, you mean? I know what I mean. There's something not quite right with you. I can sense that. After all, I have known you ever since you were a youngster. When I met you, you came up to my waist. And now I feel that you're spinning around in some damned whirlpool, tangled up in a slowly tightening noose. I want to know what's happening, but I can't do it myself. I have to count on Iola's gifts.
You want to delve too deeply? Why the metaphysics? I'll confide in you if you like. I'll fill your evenings with tales of ever more astounding events from the past few years. Get a keg of beer so my throat doesn't dry up and we can start today. But I fear I'll bore you because you won't find any nooses or vortexes there. Just the Witcher's ordinary tales.
I'll willingly listen, but a trance, I repeat, will do no harm.
Don't you think, he smiled, that my lack of faith makes such a trance pointless?
No, I don't. And do you know why?
No.
Neneke leaned over and looked him in the eye with a strange smile on her pale lips. Because it would be the first proof I've ever heard of that a lack of faith has any kind of power at all. Shout out, Neneke! And that was that episode. And that's what we're going to call it. Shout out to Mom on that one. I can't see the viewer count intentionally, so I don't know who's still with me. I see Shadow. I would guess Chooch is still here. Ant's probably long gone. Scooty. And anyone else who might not have made their presence known today. You know what I want to hear? One more for the get. Come on, babe.
Toss a coin to your Witcher, O Valley
Maybe
of
after every chapter we hit that one, huh?
O Valley
That's what
of
she said.
plenty, oh.
All right. Do it. Bam, bam, bam. You want it, you got it, baby. I really like this book. I think we did well, chat. I think we did well. Here's what I believe. I'm going to hit you with a nugget. Since we're talking faith and magic and all that, I often affirm that things happen the way that they're supposed to. Now, listen, I know some of you are going to challenge me on this. That's okay. But I do. I deeply believe this. And because I believe it, I think that is my reality. You see, that's the beauty of it all. I think we get to choose and we get to shape how it all works. And I like to think that things happen the way that they're meant to. And so we were meant to read this book, and that's why it's as fun as it is. One time for that. The next episode, I like calling it that, although it's a bit confusing because these Twitch streams are also episodic, nah? But okay, suppose we can have the same definition. I'm just looking ahead to gain a sense. So chapter 1 is short, but chapter 2 is quite lengthy. So we can take a pause after 1 and see how we feel. Actually, I'm missing 3. I went to 4. Anyway, we'll just take it as it comes.
That's what she said.
I know I don't do this intentionally, by the way. It's just when I think of it. So if you're like, ah, it's annoying, let me know. I can chill out with that. All right. A Grain of Truth is the next episode. Let's see what happens. A number of black points moving against a bright sky, streaked with mist dew, and it drew the Witcher's attention. Birds. They wheeled in slowly, peaceful circles, then suddenly swooped and soared up again, flapping their wings. The Witcher observed the birds for a long time, and then, bearing in mind the shape of the land, density of the wood, depth and course of the ravine which he suspected lay in its path, calculated the distance to them, and how long he would take to cover it. Finally, he threw aside his coat and lightened the belt across his chest by 2 holes. The pommel and hilt of the sword, strapped across his back, peeked over his shoulder.
"We'll go a little out of our way, Roach," he said. "We'll take a detour from the highway. I don't think the birds are circling there for nothing."
The mare walked on, obedient to Geralt's voice.
"Maybe it's just dead elk," said Geralt. But maybe it's not. Who knows?
There was a ravine. As he suspected, the Witcher scanned the crowns of the trees, tightly filling the rift. But the sides of the gully were gentle, the riverbed dry and clear of black thorns and rotting tree trunks. He crossed it easily. On the other side was a copse of birches, and behind it a large glade, heath and undergrowth, which threw tentacles of tangled branches and roots upwards. The birds, scared away by the appearance of a rider, soared higher, croaking sharply in their hoarse voices. Geralt saw the first corpse immediately. The white of the sheepskin jacket and matte blue of the dress stood out clearly against a yellowing clump of sedge. He didn't see the second corpse, but its location was betrayed by 3 wolves sitting calmly on their haunches watching the Witcher. His mare snorted, and the wolves, as if at a command, unhurriedly trotted into the woods, every now and again turning their triangular heads to watch the newcomer. Geralt jumped off his horse. The woman in the sheepskin and blue dress had no face or throat, and most of her left thigh had gone. The Witcher, not leaning over, walked by her. The man lay with his face to the ground. Geralt didn't turn the body over, seeing that the wolves and birds hadn't been idle, and there was no need to examine the corpse in any detail. The shoulders and back of the woolen doublet were covered with thick, black rivulets of dried blood. It was clear that the man had died from a blow to the neck, and the wolves had only found the body afterwards. On a wide belt next to a short cutlass in a wooden sheath, the man wore a leather purse. The Witcher tore it off, and, item by item, threw the contents on the grass. A tinderbox, a piece of chalk, sealing wax, a handful of silver coins, a folding shaving knife with a bone handle, a rabbit's ear, 3 keys, and a talisman with a phallic symbol. 2 letters written on canvas were damp with rain and dew, smudged beyond readability. The third, written on parchment, was also ruined by damp, but still legible. It was a credit note made out by the dwarves' bank in Murrayville to a merchant called Rule Asper, or Aspen. It wasn't a large sum. Bending over, Geralt lifted the man's right hand. As he had expected, the copper ring digging into the swollen blue finger carried the sign of the Armorers Guild, a stylized helmet with visor, 2 crossed swords, and the rune A engraved beneath them. The Witcher returned to the woman's corpse. As he was turning the body over, something prickled him in the finger. A rose, pinned to the dress. The flower had withered, but not lost its color. The petals were dark blue, very dark blue. It was the first time Geralt had seen such a rose. He turned the body over completely and winced. On the woman's bare and bloody neck were clear bite marks, and not those of a wolf. The Witcher carefully backed away to his horse. Without taking his eyes from the forest edge, he climbed into the saddle. He circled the glade twice, and leaning over, looked around, examining the ground closely. Dr. Ducky! Thank you so much for the follow, sincerely.
Thank you. Far too kind.
I'm deeply grateful. Thank you, and thank you for being here. I don't know if you heard previous episodes or chapters, but we're here. This is getting good. Geralt's in the field. Doctor, shout out to Doc. And we're back. The Witcher carefully backed away into his horse. Without taking his eyes from the forest edge, he climbed into the saddle. He circled the glade twice, leaning over, looked around, examining the ground closely.
So, Roach, he said quietly, the case is reasonably clear. The armorer and the woman arrived on horseback from the direction of the forest. They were on their way home from Murrayville, because nobody carries an uncashed credit note for long. Why they were going this way and not following the highway, I don't know. But they were crossing the heath side by side. And then, again, I don't know, they both dismantled or fell from their horses. The armorer died instantly. The woman ran, then fell and died. And whatever attacked her, which didn't leave any tracks, dragged her along the ground with her throat in its teeth. The horses ran off. This happened 2 or 3 days ago.
The mare snorted restlessly, reacting to the tone of voice.
The thing which killed them, continued Geralt, watching the forest's edge, was neither a werewolf nor a leshy. Neither would have left so much for the scavengers. If there were swamps here, I'd say it was Kikimora or a viper. But they aren't any swamps here.
Leaning over, the Witcher pulled back the blanket which covered the horse's side and uncovered another sword strapped to the saddlebag, one with a shining, ornate guard and black corrugulated hilt. Corrugulated. Dr. Duck, thank you again for being here. One time.
Well, Roach, we're taking a roundabout route. We'd better check why this armorer and woman were riding through the forest, not along the highway. If we pass by ignoring such incidences, we won't ever earn enough for your oats, will we?
The mare obediently moved forward across the heath, carefully sidestepping hollows.
Although it's not a werewolf, we won't take any risks.
The Witcher continued, taking a bunch of dried monk's head from a saddlebag and hanging it by the bit. The mare snorted. Geralt unlaced his tunic a little bit and pulled out a medallion engraved with a wolf and barred jaws. The medallion, hanging on a silver chain, bobbed up and down in rhythm to the horse's gait, sparkling in the sun's rays like mercury.
Oh, Valley of Plenty, oh, Valley of Plenty, oh.
That was chapter 1 of episode 2, A Grain of Truth. We've stumbled onto a couple of corpses, slain by who knows what. Not a werewolf, but something like it, perhaps. Dr. Ducky, so glad you're enjoying it. Yep, here we are. And for you, we'll continue. We've got chapter 2. Let me just take a look, because it looked to be a bit longer. If anybody needs a break before we dive into this next chapter, you let me know. We can do that. I'll hit the button, and we can return in a few. That's what she does.
That's what she said.
Wow. So chapter 2 is the longest chapter we've come across just yet. I think what I'm going to do is take a half a minute break, refill my
tankard. Perhaps I'll have a pint of ale while we break into chapter 2.
Do we like the voice, by the way? I haven't really asked. I suppose it doesn't matter. I'm going to keep doing it. But if you hate it, I guess I'm fishing for compliments is really what I'm trying to do. There it is. Thank you, bro. You're my guy. Aww.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Far too kind.
Okay. Chucha, you've been awfully quiet if you're still around. Here's what we're going to do. Everybody good? I'm going to run, get a glass of something else to drink. We'll be back in maybe 2 minutes or less. Yeah? Chucha loves the voices. Glad to hear that. So I'm going to change scenes on you. I'll be back in 2. Everybody good? Go take a potty break if you need one. And we'll read chapter 2, which is a bit longer. All right, make it 1. You got it. And we're back. I hope y'all are still with me. Let's be perfectly honest. I just wanted an excuse to use that BRB scene. Otherwise, I never do. And I think it's cool. So there you go. I did, however, get a pint of ale to finish this off. It's about 5 o'clock where I'm at, so it's legal. We'll give everybody another second or two to come back on in here. Get comfy. This is going to be a longer read. Hope everybody's having a good time. It's been a fun stream, huh? Give you a recap after we do this chapter. Not so excited to go back to work tomorrow. Not that I hate work. I've enjoyed the extended holiday, innit? But I suppose all good things, you know what I mean? Dr. Ducky, thank you so much for being here. You are a wonderful addition. And I've had the privilege of seeing you on Shadow streams. So shout out. Hey. Yeah, sir. All right. Shadow, Chooch. Gonna get that perhaps. Y'all there? That's your call to action. And in the spirit of, I forget where we are, Rivia. How about that? In the spirit of Rivia.
Toss a coin to your witcher, O Valley of Plenty, O Valley of Plenty.
I think that's a nice addition to the stream. It's lit! Bang. Love the Dragon Ball. Okay. To bring us all back, he has an idea. Wait. Yeah, I just had an idea. Go ahead, Shadow. Sing us Toss a Coin. Not this stream. I gave you the sound bite. I couldn't do it any better than the Bard. Please. Ryan B doesn't stand for Ryan Bard. Ryan Barbara. Here we go. All right. Give you the episode title once more. Let the community decide. Listen, sometimes this is a democracy. Sometimes this is a dictatorship. Sing or no sing. It's a no sing. I promise you it's a no sing. But I love the spirit, okay? Thank you. Welcome to the chat. Fed me. 2 time. I don't know if you've caught the first chapter of the new episode. The episode is entitled A Grain of Truth. To bring everybody back to speed, what's happened is it's like a scene change, okay? I think the Striga happened. We've moved on from that. Geralt's all healed up. He's now adventuring. He's out there. He's coming out of the woods and he's in like a field. Hey! Shout out my guy Eric in the Chizat. First time chatter. We gotta acknowledge that. Thank you for being here. Tears and talk. Shout out to H5P in the building.
Thank you. Far too kind.
Two little demons. He's got demons of his own. We could send the Witcher over. Maybe he can put those little demons to rest. I don't know. But thank you for being here sincerely. I'm going to catch everybody up one more game. Now that I know we've got a full house. This is maybe more than when we've had in a while. You missed a couple of great things, by the way. I gave you movie reviews. We had a couple of games in the beginning. It's always good to tune in live when we do. All right. So really quickly, we have finished episode 1. We've decided, or I've been educated, that these books, it's hard to explain. Basically, you have chapters, right? And then at the end of the chapter, if the story's like moving on, then we have episodes. So we finished episode 1 and then 2, and now we're on technically episode 3, which is entitled A Grain of Truth. And we are on chapter 2 of that episode. And in the first chapter of this episode, Geralt's coming out of the forest. He's in a field. He sees 2 dead bodies, some corpses, male and a female. One is an armorer, the other a woman. She has, however, a blue rose on her person, which he's never seen before, so that's probably important. And they've been slain. Now, he can't figure out why they have gone the way that they have, because they're off the highway. They took the long way home, apparently. And their horses are gone, so either they got knocked off their horses or they jumped off the horses for some reason, and they've been slain. And the hypothesis is that it was some kind of creature, not a werewolf per se, but could be, or could be like a werewolf. And I think that's as far as we know. Chat, you can help me if I'm wrong. Chat. I don't know, but that's what we got. So one more again, thank you for being here, sincerely. Chapter 2, it's a bit longer, so everybody get comfortable. I'm gonna do this for you, and then we're gonna get into it.
Toss a coin to your witcher, O Valley of Plenty, O Valley of Plenty, oh.
Chapter 2. He noticed the red tiles of the tower's conical roof from the summit of a hill as he cut across a bend in the faint trail. The slope, covered with a haze, dry branches, and a thick carpet of yellow leaves, wasn't safe to descend on horseback. The Witcher retreated, carefully rode down the incline, and returned to the main path. He rode slowly, stopped the horse every now and again, and hanging from the saddle, looked out for tracks. The mare tossed her head, neighed wildly, stamped and danced on the path, kicking up a storm of dried leaves. Geralt, wrapping his left arm around the horse's neck, swept his right hand, the fingers arranged in the sign of Axia, over the mount's head as he whispered an incantation.
Is it as bad as all that?
He murmured, looking around and not withdrawing the sign.
Easy, Roach, easy.
The charm worked quickly, but the mare, prodded with his heel, moved forward reluctantly, losing the natural springy rhythm of her gait. The Witcher jumped nimbly to the ground and went on by foot, leading her by the bridle. She saw a wall. There was no gap between the wall and the forest, no distinct break. The young trees and juniper bushes twined their leaves with the ivy, and wild vines clinging to the stonework. Geralt looked up. At that same moment, he felt a prickle along his neck, as if an invisible, soft creature had latched onto his neck, lifting the hairs there. He was being watched. He turned around smoothly. Roach snorted. The muscles in her neck twitched, moved under the skin. A girl was standing on the slope of the hill he had just climbed down, one arm resting on the trunk of an adler tree. Her trailing white dress contrasted with the glossy blackness of her disheveled hair, falling to her shoulders. She seemed to be smiling, but she was too far away to be sure. "Greetings," he said, raising his hand in a friendly gesture. He took a step towards the girl. She turned her head a little, following his movements. Her face was pale, her eyes black and enormous. The smile, if it had been a smile, vanished from her face as though wiped away with a cloth. Geralt took another step. The leaves rustled underfoot, and the girl ran down the slope like a deer, flitting between the hazel bushes. She was no more than a white streak as she disappeared into the depths of the forest. The long dress didn't appear to restrict her ease of movement, at the least. Roach neighed anxiously, tossing her head. Geralt, still watching the forest, instinctively calmed her with the sign again. Pulling the mare by the bridle, he walked away slowly along the wall, wading through burdock up to the waist. They came to a sturdy gate with iron fittings and rusty hinges, furnished with a great brass knocker. After a moment's hesitation, Geralt reached out and touched the tarnished ring. He immediately jumped back. At that moment, the gate opened, squeaking, clattering, a raking aside clumps of grass, stones, and branches. There was no one behind it. The Witcher could only see a deserted courtyard, neglected and overgrown with nettles. He entered, leading Roach. The mare, still stunned by the sign, didn't resist, but she moved stiffly and hesitantly after him. The courtyard was surrounded on three sides by a wall and the remains of some wooden scaffolding. On the fourth side stood the mansion, its facade modded by a pox of chipped plaster, dirty, damp patches, festooned with ivy. The shutters, with their peeling paint, were closed, as was the door. Geralt threw Roach's reins over the pillar by the gate and slowly made his way towards the mansion, following the gravel path past a small fountain full of leaves and other rubbish. In the center of the fountain, on a fanciful plinth, a white stone dolphin arched, turning its chipped tail upwards. Next to the fountain, in what, a very long time ago, used to be a flower bed, grew a rose bush. Nothing but the color of the flowers made this bush unique, but the flowers were exceptional. Indigo, with a faint shade of purple on the tips of some of the petals. The Witcher touched one, brought his face closer, and inhaled. The flowers held the typical scent of roses, only a little more intense. The door and all the shutters of the mansion flew open at the same instant with a bang. Geralt raised his head abruptly. Down the path, scrunching the gravel, a monster was rushing straight at him. The Witcher's right hand rose, as fast as lightning above his right shoulder, while his left jerked the belt across his chest, making the sword hilt jump to its palm. The blade leaping from the scabbard with a hiss,
traced a short, luminous semicircle and froze, the point aiming at the charging beast. At the sight of the sword, the monster stopped short, spraying gravel in all directions. The Witcher didn't even flinch. The creature was humanoid and dressed in clothes which, though tattered, were of good quality and not lacking in stylish and useless ornamentation. His human form, however, reached no higher than the soiled collar of his tunic, for above it loomed a gigantic, hairy, bear-like head with enormous ears, a pair of wild eyes and terrifying jaws full of crooked fangs in which a red tongue flickered like flame. "Flee, mortal man!" the monster roared, flapping his paws but not moving from the spot. "I'll devour you, tear you to pieces!" The Witcher didn't move, didn't lower his sword. "Are you deaf? Away with you!" the creature screamed. It made a sound somewhere between a pig squeal and a stag's bellowing roar, making the shutters ratter and clatter and shatter and rumble, plaster coming off the sills. Neither the Witcher nor the monster moved. "Clear off while you're still in one piece!" roared the creature, less sure of himself, "because if you don't—" "Then what?" interrupted Geralt. The monster suddenly gasped and tilted his monstrous head. "Look at him! Isn't he brave?" he spoke, baring his fangs and glowering at Geralt with bloodshot eyes. "Lower that iron, if you please. Perhaps you've not realized you're in my courtyard. Or maybe it's customary, wherever you're from, to threaten people with swords in their own courtyards." "It is customary," Geralt agreed. "When faced with people who greet their guests with roar and the cry that they're going to tear you to pieces." "Pox on it!" The monster got himself worked up. "And he'll insult me on top of all of that, this straggler. A guest, is he? Pushes his way into the yard, ruins someone else's flowers, plays the Lord and thinks he'll be brought bread and salt. Bah!" The creature spat, gasped, and shut his jaws. The lower fangs protruded, making him look like a boar. "So?" the Witcher spoke after a moment, lowering his sword. "Are we going to carry on, standing like this?" "And what do you suggest instead? Lying down?" snorted the monster. "Put that iron away, I said." The Witcher nimbly slipped the weapon into its scabbard, and, without lowering his arm, stroked the hilt, which rose above his shoulder. "I'd prefer you," he said, "not to make any sudden moves. This sword can always be drawn again, faster than you imagine." "I noticed," rasped the monster. "If it wasn't for you, that you'd have been out of this gate a long time ago with my boot print on your arse. What do you want here? How did you get here?" "I got lost," lied the Witcher. "You got lost?" repeated the monster, twisting his jaws in a menacing grin. "Well, unloose your way, out of the gate. Turn your left ear to the sun and keep walking, and you'll soon get back to the highway. Well, what are you waiting for?" "Is there any water?" asked Geralt calmly. "The horse is thirsty. And so am I, if that doesn't inconvenience you." The monster shifted from one foot to the other and scratched his ear. "Listen, you," he said. "Are you really not frightened of me?" "Should I be?" The monster looked around, cleared his throat, and yanked up his baggy trousers. "Pox on it! What's the harm of a guest in the house? It's not every day I meet someone who doesn't run away or faint at the sight of me. All right, then. If you're a weary but honest wanderer, I invite you in. But if you're a brigand or a thief, then I warn you, this house does what I tell it to. Within these walls, I rule." He lifted his hairy paw.
All the shutters clattered against the wall once more, and deep in the dolphin's stone gullet, something rumbled. "I invite you in," he repeated. Geralt didn't move, scrutinizing him.
Do you live alone?
"What's that to do with you?" said the monster angrily, opening his jaws, then croaked loudly. "Oh, I see. No doubt you'd like to know whether I have 47 servants, all as beautiful as me. I don't. Well, pox if you're going to make use of my generous invitation. If not, the gate's over there." Geralt bowed stiffly.
I accept your invitation,
He said formally.
I won't slight the right of hospitality.
"My house is your house," the monster said in return, just as formally, although a little offhandedly. "This way, please, dear guest, and leave the horse here by the well." The interior was in need of extensive repair, although it was reasonably clean and tidy. The furniture had been made by skilled craftsmen, if a very long time ago. A pungent smell of dust hung in the dark rooms. "Light!" growled the monster, and the torch in its iron bracket burst into flames and sooty smoke.
Not bad,
remarked the Witcher. The monster cackled. "That's it? I see you won't be amazed by any old trick. I told you, this house obeys my commands. This way, please. Careful, the stairs are steep. Light!" On the stairs, the monster turned. "What's that around your neck, dear guest?"
Have a look.
The creature took the medallion in its paw, lifted it up to its eyes, tightening the chain around Geralt's neck just a little. "The animal has an unpleasant expression. What is it?"
My guild's badge.
"Ah. You make muzzles, no doubt. This way, please. Light!" The center of the large room, completely devoid of windows, was taken up by a huge oak table, empty apart from an enormous brass candlestick, slowly turning green and covered with trickles of hardened wax. At the monster's command, the candles lit and flickered, brightening the interior a little. One wall was hung with weapons, compositions of round shields, crossed partisans, javelins, and garrisims, heavy sabers, and axes. Half of the adjacent wall was taken up by an enormous fireplace, above which hung rows of flaking and peeling portraits. The wall facing the entrance was filled with hunting trophies, elks and stag antlers, whose branching racks threw long shadows across the grinning mounted heads of wild boar, bear, and lynx, over the ruffled and frayed wings of eagles and hawks. The place of honor was filled by a rock dragon's head, tainted brown, damaged and leaking stuffing. Geralt examined it more closely. "My grandpa killed it," said the monster, throwing a huge log into the depths of the fireplace. "It was probably the last one in the vicinity when it got itself killed. Sit, my dear guest. You're hungry?"
I won't deny it, dear host.
The monster sat at the table, lowered his head, clasped his hairy paws over his stomach, muttered something while twiddling with enormous thumbs, then suddenly roared, thumping the table with his paw. Dishes and platters rattled like pewter and silver, chalices jingling like crystal. There was a smell of roast meat, garlic, marjoram, and nutmeg. Geralt did not show any surprise. "Yes," the monster rubbed his hands. "This is better than servants, isn't it? Help yourself, dear guest. Here is some fowl. Here is some boar ham. Here, terrine of, I don't know what, something. Here you have some hazelgrouse. Pox! No, it's partridge. I got the spells muddled up. Eat up, please, eat up. This is proper, real food, don't worry.
I'm not worried.
Geralt tore the fowl into two. I forgot, snorted the monster, that you're not timid. What shall I call you?
Geralt. And your name, dear host?
Nivellen. But they call me Dagon or Fanger around here, and they use me to frighten children. The monster poured the contents of an enormous chalice down his throat, after which he sank his fingers into the tureen, tearing half of it from the bowl in one go.
Frightened children, repeated Geralt with his mouth full. Without any reason, no doubt.
Of course not. Your health, Geralt.
And yours, Nivellen.
How's the wine? Have you noticed that it's made from grapes and not apples? But if you don't like it, I'll conjure up a different one.
Thank you. It's not bad. Are your magical powers innate?
No. I've had them since growing this. This trap, that is. I don't know how it happened myself, but the house does whatever I wish. Nothing very big. I can conjure up food, drink, clothes, clean linen, hot water, soap. Any woman can do that, and without using magic at that. I can open and close windows and doors. I can light a fire. Nothing very remarkable.
It's something. And this trap, as you call it, have you had it long?
12 years.
How did it happen?
What's it got to do with you? Pour yourself some more wine.
With pleasure. It's got nothing to do with me. I'm just asking out of curiosity.
An acceptable reason, the monster said, and laughed loudly. But I don't accept it. It's got nothing to do with you, and that's that. But just to satisfy your curiosity a little, I'll show you what I used to look like. Look at these portraits. The first from the chimney is my father. The second, Pox only knows. And the third is me. Can you see it? Beneath the dust and spiderwebs, a nondescript man with a bloated, sad, spotty face and watery eyes looked down from the painting. Geralt, who was no stranger to the way portrait painters tended to flatter their clients, nodded. Can you see it? Repeated Nivellen, baring his fangs.
I can.
Who are you?
I don't understand.
You don't understand? The monster raised his head. His eyes shone like a cat's. My portrait is hung beyond the candlelight. I can see it, but I'm not human. At least, not at the moment. A human looking at my portrait would get up, go closer, and no doubt have to take the candlestick with him. You didn't do that, so the conclusion is simple. But I'm asking you plainly, are you human? Geralt didn't lower his eyes.
If that's the way you put it.
He answered after a moment's silence.
Then, not quite.
Ah. Surely it won't be tactless if I ask, in that case, what you are.
A witcher.
Ah, Nivellen repeated after a moment. If I remember rightly, witchers earn their living in an interesting way. They kill monsters for money.
You remember correctly.
Silence fell again. Candle flames pulsated, flicked upwards in thin wisps of fire, glimmering in the cut crystal chalices. Cascades of wax trickled down the candlestick. Nivellen sat still, lightly twitching his enormous ears. Let's assume, he said finally, that you draw your sword before I jump on you. Let's assume you even manage to cut me down. With my weight, that won't stop me. I'll take you down through sheer momentum.
and then it's teeth that'll decide. What do you think, Witcher? Which one of us has a better chance if it comes to biting each other's throats? Geralt, steadying the carafe's pewter stopper with his thumb, poured himself some wine, took a sip, and leaned back into his chair. He was watching the monster with a smile, an exceptionally ugly one. Yes, said Nivellen slowly, digging at the corner of his jaws with his claw. One has to admit, you can answer questions without using many words. It'll be interesting to see how you manage the next one. Who paid you to deal with me? No one. I'm here by accident. You're not lying, by any chance? I'm not in the habit of lying. And what are you in the habit of doing? I've heard about witchers. They abduct tiny children, whom they feed with magic herbs. The ones who survive become witchers themselves, sorcerers with inhuman powers. They're taught to kill, and all human feelings and reactions are trained out of them. They're turned into monsters in order to kill other monsters. I've heard it said it's high time someone started hunting witchers, as there are fewer and fewer monsters and more witchers. Do have some partridge before it's completely cold. Nivellen took the partridge from the dish, put it between his jaws, and crunched it like a piece of toast, bones cracking as they were crushed between his teeth. Why don't you say anything? He asked, indistinctly swallowing. How much of the rumors about you witchers is true? Practically nothing. And what's a lie? There are fewer and fewer monsters. True. There's a fair number of them. Nivellen bared his fangs. One is sitting in front of you wondering if he did the right thing by inviting you in. I didn't like your guild badge right from the start, dear guest. You aren't a monster, Nivellen, the Witcher said dryly. Pox, that's something new. So what am I, cranberry pudding? A flock of wild geese flying south on a sad November morning? No? Maybe I'm the virtue that a miller's bosom's daughter lost in spring. Well, Geralt, tell me what I am. Can't you see I'm shaking with curiosity? You're not a monster. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to touch this silver tray. And in no way could you hold my medallion. Ha! Nivellen roared so powerfully the candle flames fell horizontally for a moment. Today, very clearly, is a day for reveling great and terrible secrets. Now I'm going to be told that I grew these ears just because I didn't like milky porridge as a child. No, Nivellen, said Geralt calmly. It happened because of a spell. I'm sure you know who cast that spell. And what if I do? In many cases, a spell can be uncast. You, as a witcher, can uncast spells in many cases? I can. Do you want me to try? No, I don't. The monster opened his jaws and poked out his tongue, 2 span long and very red. Surprised you, hasn't it? That it has, admitted Geralt. The monster giggled and lounged in his armchair. I knew that would, he said. Pour yourself some more. Get comfortable, and I'll tell you the whole story. Witcher or not, you've got an honest face, and I feel like talking. Pour yourself more. There's none left. Pox on it. The monster cleared his throat, then thumped the table with his paw again. A large earthenware demijohn in a wicker basket appeared next to the 2 empty carafes from nowhere. Nivellen tore the sealing wax off with his teeth. As you've no doubt noticed, he began, pouring the wine,
This is quite a remote area. It's a long way to the nearest human settlement. It's because, you see, my father, and my grandfather too, in his time, didn't make themselves particularly loved by our neighbors or the merchants using the highway. If anyone went astray here, and my father spotted them from the tower, they lost, at best, their fortune. And a couple of the nearer settlements were burnt because father decided the levies were being paid tardily. Not many people liked my father, except for me, naturally. I cried awfully when what was left of my father after a blow from a two-handed sword was brought home on a cart one day. Grandpa didn't take part in robbery anymore because, well, ever since he was hit on the head with a morning star, he had a terrible stutter. He dribbled and rarely made it to the privy on time. As their heir, I had to lead the gang. I was young at the time, Nivellen continued. A real milksop, so the lads in the crew wound me around with their little fingers, and in a flash, I was as much in command of them as a fat piglet is of a pack of wolves. We soon began doing things which father would never have allowed had he been alive. I'll spare you the details and get straight to the point. One day we took ourselves as far as Gelibol, near Mert, and we robbed a temple. A young priestess was there too.
Which temple, Nivellen?
Pox only knows, but it must have been a bad one. There were skulls and bones on the altar, I remember, and a green fire was burning. It stank like nobody's business, but to the point. The lads overpowered the priestess and stripped her, then said I had to become a man. Well, I became a man, stupid little snot that I was, and while I was achieving manhood, the priestess spat into my face and screamed something.
What?
That I was a monster in human skin, that I'd be a monster in a monster's skin, something about love, blood, I can't remember. She must have had the dagger, a little one hidden in her hair. She killed herself, and then we fled from there, Geralt, I'm telling you. We nearly wore our horses out. It was a bad temple.
Go on.
Then it was as the priestess has said. A few days later, I woke up, and as the servants saw me, they screamed and took to their heels. I went to the mirror. You see, Geralt, I panicked. Had some sort of attack. I remember it as like a haze. To put it briefly, corpses fell. Several. I used whatever came to hand, and I suddenly became very strong. And the house helped as best it could. Doors slammed, furniture flew in the air, fires broke out. Whoever could get out ran away in panic. My aunt and cousin, the lads from the crew. What am I saying? Even the dogs howled and cowered. My cat, Glutton, ran away. Even my aunt's parrot kicked the bucket out of fear. I was alone, roaring, howling, going mad, smashing whatever came to hand. Mainly mirrors. Nivellen paused, sighed, and sniffed. When the attack was over, he resumed after a while, it was already too late. I was alone. I couldn't explain to anyone that my appearance had changed, that although this horrible shape, I was just a stupid youngster, sobbing over the servants' bodies in an empty manor. I was afraid they'd come back and kill me before I could explain. My body returned. Nobody returned. The monster grew silent for a moment and wiped his nose on his sleeve. I don't want to go back to those first months, Geralt. It still leaves me shaking when I recall them. I'll get to the point. For a long time, a very long time, I sat in the manor, quiet as a mouse, not stirring from the place. If anyone appeared, which rarely happened, I wouldn't go out. I'd tell the house to slam the shutters a couple of times, or I'd roar through the gargoyle. That was usually enough to get the would-be guest to leave in a hurry. So that's how it was. Until one day, I looked out the window, one pale dawn, and what did I see? Some trespasser stealing a rose from my aunt's bush. And it wasn't just any old rose bush. These are blue roses from Nazaire. It was grandfather who brought the seedlings. I flew into a fury and jumped outside. The fat trespasser, when he got his voice back, he lost it when he saw me, squealed that he only wanted a few flowers for his daughter, that I should spare him, spare his life and his health. I was just ready to kick him out of the main gate when I remembered something. Stories Lenka, my nanny, the old bag, used to tell me. Pox on it, I thought. If pretty girls turn frogs into princes, or the other way around, then maybe there's a grain of truth in these stories. A chance. I leapt 4 yards, roared so loud Wild Vine tumbled from the wall, and I yelled, "Your daughter or your life!" Nothing better came to mind. The merchant, for he was a merchant, began to weep, then confessed that his daughter was only 8. Are you laughing? No. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry over my shitty fate. I felt sorry for the old traitor. I couldn't watch him shake like that. I invited him inside, made him welcome, and when he was leaving, I poured gold and precious stones into his bag. There was still a fair fortune in the cellar from Father's Day. I hadn't quite known what to do with it, so I could allow myself this gesture. The merchant beamed and thanked me so profusely that he slobbered all over himself. He must have boasted about his adventure somewhere, because not 2 weeks had gone by when another merchant appeared. He had a pretty large bag ready with him, and a daughter, also pretty large. Nivellen extended his legs under the table and stretched until the armchair creaked. I came to an understanding with the merchant in no time, he continued. He'd leave her with me for a year. I had to help him load the sack onto his mule. He wouldn't have managed it by himself. And the girl? She had fits at the sight of me for a while. She really thought I'd eat her. But after a month, we were eating at the same table, chatting and going for long walks. She was kind and remarkably smart, and I'd get tongue-tied when I talked to her. You see, Geralt, I was always shy with girls. Always made a laughingstock of myself, even with the wenches from the cowshed with dung up to their knees. Girls the lads from the crew turned over this way and that way at will. Even they made fun of me. To say nothing of having a maw like this. I couldn't even make myself say anything I had paid so dearly for a year of her life. The year dragged like the stench following marauding troops until, at last, the merchant arrived and took her away. I locked myself in the house, resigned. Several months to any of the guests who turned up with their daughters. But after a year spent with company, I realized how hard it was to live without anyone to talk to. The monster made out a noise which was supposed to be a sigh, but came out more like a hiccup. The next one, he said after a while, was called Fene. She was small, bright and chirpy, a real Goldcrest. She wasn't frightened of me at all. Once, on the anniversary of my first haircut, my coming of age, we both drunk a little too much mead, and straight after, I jumped out of bed and ran to the mirror. I must admit, I was disappointed and despondent. The trap was the same as it ever was, if with slightly more stupid expression. And they say the wisdom of ages is to be found in fairy tales. It's not worth a shit, wisdom like that, Geralt. Well, Fene quickly tried to make me forget my worries. She was a jolly girl, I tell you. Do you know what she thought up? We'd both frighten unwanted guests. Imagine, a guest like that enters the courtyard, looks around, and then, with a roar, I charge at him on all fours, while Fene, completely naked, sitting on my back and blowing my grandfather's hunting horn. Nivellen shook with laughter, the white of his fangs flashing. Fene, he continued, stayed with me for a year, then returned to her family with a huge dowry. She was preparing to marry a tavern owner, a widower.
Carry on, Nivellen. This is interesting.
You think so? Said the monster, scratching himself between the ears with a rasping sound. All right. The next one, Primula, was the daughter of an impoverished knight. The knight, when he got here, had a skinny horse, a rusty cuirass, and an incredible debt. He was as hideous as cow dung, I tell you. Geralt, he also had a similar smell. Primula, I'd wager my right hand, was convinced that while he was at war, as she was quite pretty, it didn't frighten her either, which isn't surprising, really. As compared to her parent, I might have appeared quite commonly. She had, as it turned out, quite a temperament, and I, having gained some self-confidence, seized the moment by the horns. After 2 weeks, Primula and I had already had a very close relationship. She liked to pull me by the ears and shout, "Bite me to death, you animal, and tear me apart, you beast," and other equally idiotic things. I ran to the mirror in the breaks, but just imagine, Geralt, I looked at myself with growing anxiety. Less and less did I long to return to my former shape. You see, Geralt, I used to be a weakling, and now I'd become a strapping fellow. I'd keep getting ill, I'd cough, my nose would run, but now I didn't catch anything. And my teeth? You wouldn't believe how rotten my teeth had been. And now I can bite through the leg of a chair. Do you want me to bite a chair leg?
No, I don't.
Maybe that's good. The monster opened his mouth wide. My showing off used to amuse the girls, and there aren't many whole chairs left in the house. Nivellen yawned, his enormous tongue rolling into a tube. This talking has made me tired, Geralt. Briefly, there were 2 other after Primula, Ika and Venemiria. Everything happened in the same way, to the point of boredom. First, a mixture of fear and reserve, then a thread of sympathy reinforced by small precious gifts, then, bite me, eat me up. Daddy's return, a tender farewell, and an increasingly discernible depletion of my treasury.
I decided to take increasingly longer breaks to be alone. Of course, I'd long ago stopped believing that a virgin's kiss would transform the way I looked, and I'd come to terms with it. And what's more, I'd come to terms that the conclusion of things were as fine as they were, and there wasn't any need for change. Really? No changes, Nivelin? It's true. I have a horse's health, which I came with the way I look, for one. Secondly, my being different works on girls like an aphrodisiac. Don't laugh. I'm certain that as a human, I'd have to give a mighty good chase to get a girl like, for example, Venemiria, who was an extremely beautiful maid. I don't suppose she'd had given twice a glance at the fellow in the portrait. And thirdly, safety. Father had enemies, and a couple of them had survived. People whom the crew, under my pitiful leadership, had sent to their graves. They had relatives. There's gold in the cellar. If it wasn't for the fear inspired by me, somebody would come and get it. If only peasants with pitchforks. You seem quite sure, Geralt remarked, playing with an empty chalice, that you haven't offended anyone in your present shape. No father, no daughter, no relative or daughter's betrothed. Leave off, Geralt. Nivelin was indignant. What are you talking about? The fathers couldn't contain themselves from joy. I told you, I was incredibly generous. And the daughters, you don't see them when they got here? Their dresses of sackcloth, their little hands raw from washing, their shoulders stooped from carrying buckets. Even after 2 weeks with me, Primula still had marks on her back and thighs from the strap her knightly father had beaten her with. They walked around like princesses here, carried nothing but a fan, and didn't even know where the kitchen was. I dressed them up. I covered them with trinkets. At the click of a finger, I'd conjure up hot water in the tin bath Father plunged. Can you imagine a tin bath? There's hardly a regent. What am I saying? Hardly a lord who's got a tin bath at home. This was a house from a fairy tale for them, Geralt. And as far as bed is concerned, well, pox on it. Virtue is rarer today than a rock dragon. I didn't force any of them, Geralt. But you suspected someone had paid me to kill you. Who would have? A scoundrel who wanted the contents of my cellar but didn't have any more daughters, Nivelin said empathically. Human greed knows no limits. And nobody else? And nobody else. They both remained silent, gazing at the nervous flicker of the candle flames. Nivelin, said the Witcher suddenly, are you alone now? Witcher, answered the monster after a moment's hesitation, I think that, in principle, I ought to insult you, take you by the neck and throw you down the stairs. Do you know why? Because you treat me like a dimwit. I noticed how you've been cocking your ears and glancing at the door. You know perfectly well I don't live alone. Am I right? You are. I'm sorry. Pox on your apologies. Have you seen her? Yes. In the forest, by the gate. Is she why merchants and daughters have been leaving here empty-handed for some time? So you know about that too? Yes, she's the reason. Do you mind if I ask whether... Yes, I do mind. Silence again. Oh well, it's up to you, the Witcher finally said, getting up. Thanks for your hospitality, dear host. Time I was on my way.
Quite right. Nivellen also got up. For certain reasons, I can't offer you a room in the manor for the night, and I don't encourage you to spend the night in these woods. Ever since the area's been deserted, it's been bad at night here. You ought to get back to the highway before dusk.
I'll bear that in mind, Nivellen. Are you sure you don't need my help?
The monster looked at him. You think you could help me? You'd be able to lift this from me?
I wasn't only thinking about that sort of help.
You didn't answer my question. Although, you probably did. You wouldn't be able to. Geralt looked him straight in the eyes.
You had some bad luck. Of all the temples in Gelibol and the Nimnar Valley, you picked the Church of Coram Ag Terra, the lion-headed spider. In order to lift the curse thrown by the priestess of Coram Ag Terra, you need knowledge and powers which I do not possess.
And who does?
So you're interested after all. You said things were fine as they are.
As they are, yes. But not as they might be. I'm afraid that...
What are you afraid of?
The monster stopped at the door to the room and turned. I've had enough of your questions, Witcher. Which you keep asking instead of answering mine. Obviously, you've got to be asked in the right way. Listen, for some time now, I've had hideous dreams. Maybe the word monstrous would be more accurate. Am I right to be afraid? Briefly, please.
Have you ever had muddy feet after waking from such a dream? Conifer needles in your sheets?
No.
And have...
No, briefly, please.
You're rightfully afraid.
Can anything be done about it, or...?
No.
Finally, let's go. I'll see you out. In the courtyard, as Geralt was adjusting the saddlebags, Nivellen stroked the mare's nostrils and patted her neck. Roached, pleased with the caress, lowered her head. Animals like me, boasted the monster. And I like them too. My cat, Glutton, ran away at the beginning, but she came back later. For a long time, she was the only living creature who kept me company in my misfortune. Verena, too. He broke off with a grimace. Geralt smiled.
Does she like cats, too?
Birds, Nivellen. I gave myself away. Pox on it. But what's the harm? She isn't another merchant's daughter, Geralt. Or another attempt to find a grain of truth in an old folk tale. It's serious. We love each other. If you laugh, I'll sock you one. Geralt didn't laugh.
You know your Verena, he said, is probably a Rusalka.
I expected as much. Slim, dark. She rarely speaks, and in a language I don't know. She doesn't eat human food. She disappears into the forest for days on end, then comes back. Is that typical?
More or less.
The Witcher tightened Roach's girth strap.
No doubt you think she wouldn't return if you were to become human.
I'm sure of it. You know how frightened Ruscalas are of people. Hardly anybody's seen a Ruscala from up close. But Verena and I... Pox on it. Take care, Geralt.
Take care, Nivellen.
The Witcher prodded the mare on the side with his heel, and he made towards the gate. The monster shuffled along his side. Geralt?
Yes?
I'm not as stupid as you think. You came here following the tracks of one of the merchants who'd been here lately. Has something happened to one of them?
Yes.
The last was here 3 days ago, with his daughter. Not one of the prettiest, by the way. I commanded the house to close all of its doors and its shutters, and give no sign of life. They wandered around the courtyard and left. The girl picked a rose from my aunt's rose bush and pinned it to her dress. Look for them somewhere else. But be careful, this is a horrible area. I told you the forest isn't the safest place at night. Ugly things are heard and seen.
Thanks, Nivelin. I'll remember about you. Who knows? Maybe I'll find someone who...
Maybe, yes. And maybe no. It's my problem, Geralt. My life and my punishment. I've learned to put up with it. I've got used to it. If it gets worse, I'll get used to that too. And if it gets far worse, don't look for anybody. Come here yourself and put an end to it. As a witcher. Take care, Geralt. Nivelin turned and marched briskly towards the manor. He didn't look around again. Gang! That was a very long chapter. Whew. I think we lost some people in the chat, as a matter of fact. But we did it. Shout out.
Toss a coin to your witcher. Oh, Valley of Plenty. Oh, Valley of Plenty. Oh.
We testing the game. Appreciate ya. I know. And
That's what she said.
Nick Podal. I don't know who that is. I probably should know. Let's change this lighting a little bit. There we go. Chooch has got to go. Hey, thanks for sticking around, Ma. Appreciate you being here. One time. And for anybody else, my feelings will not be hurt if you got to go. This has been a 2-hour session, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you. Far too kind.
Audible. It's published on Twitch. You can also check it out on YouTube. YouTubings. He's the best narrator in the genre. Is he? Nick Podal? What would he have narrated that I might know? I'm not sure. Toss a coin to your witcher. Now it's in my mind. Back to the office tomorrow. Shout out H5P. Yeah. We'll be there. It's been a wonderful Easter break, though. I hope you all had a very lovely Easter. Hard to believe it's coming to a close, but as all good things do. It's been nice, though. I think Shadow had to bounce. He sent me a snap. Let's see what he said. Best narrator in the game. Gonna shower. I'll have you on blast. Maybe he's back then. There he is. Appreciate you, cuz. Name of the Wind. I read Name of the Wind. I didn't listen to it. Is it worth the listen? Yeah, I was reading, Shadow. Sorry I couldn't make it to the shower party. Actually, I got the invitation late. What's that?
A pint of ale for the Witcher.
He earned it, didn't he? Team, this has been nice. I prefer when the chapters are shorter. I think it does, it flows better. But this was a long scene, I get it. And for those of you that have seen the Netflix series, I think you'll recognize this character. And if you haven't, hopefully the description was good enough. I don't know if the voice, I think the voice started out strong and then it changed a little bit, but what am I gonna do? The only voice I can like go back to is
This guy.
everybody else kind of gets the same tones, but it's cool. Fortunately, there's not so many characters in each scene. Then I'd have to come up with different ones. And I didn't know that the nursemaid or whatever her name is again was a female at first, because it doesn't like tell you until later. So, but we adapt. We adapt, baby. One time. Bang. All right. This has been great. Thank you all, sincerely. Thank you for being with me. This would be terrible by myself, for real. I probably wouldn't do it. I probably would have tried it and said this was stupid. But because of y'all, your contributions, your comments, shout out to Nick Podel. Yeah, you guys make it. One more game. And not for nothing, hey, we did that 2 days ago. We dropped a new remix. Check it out. If anyone wants another chapter, I love it. Bang! How does everybody else feel? I'll do it for just one person. Here's what's sad to me. There's like 3 chapters that I can see, which means that they're all very short. Why didn't they just break up the last one? You know what I mean? Yeah, me. Chucha had to go though, but you know what? Can't please everybody. I'll fill her in. Do we want one more? Can I get one more in the chat? Bang. I'll give you a little theme music while we wait. Just get a chance to use this again. I'll tell you the relevance of this as it fades out. I watched Tetris just this morning, and it's a great movie. Dr. Ducky, you got it, buddy. Tetris. Here. If you don't know what it is, now you do. It's a film. If you haven't seen it, see it. It's great. And we played a little game where you had to guess what the movie was based on the theme music. And shout out to Nintendo. You know what I mean? All right. So we want one more. You're gonna get it. Here we go. Heading back in. That's what she said.
Toss a coin to your witcher, O Valley of Plenty, O Valley of Plenty. Oh.
So when we change scenes, there's a bit of a lag there. Sorry about that. It's my computer. It's what it is. I gotta get work to sponsor these streams so we can get better equipment at the crib. All right. We just met Geralt's friend. I think they made friends. I mean, it's kind of a weird relationship they have, but I'm going to consider them to be friends. And now I guess we've left the manor. But it was a cute little backstory there. I don't think it did anything for the story other than introducing a new character, right? I mean, what happened there other than we learned about him? But maybe he'll come on back. All right. Chapter 3. This is going to be a very short one. So, be ready. It's going to happen quick. The area was deserted, wild and ominously inhospitable. Geralt didn't return to the highway before dusk. He didn't want to take a roundabout route, so he took a shortcut through the forest. He spent the night on the bare summit of a high hill, his sword on his knees, beside a tiny campfire into which, every now and then, he threw wisps of monkshood. In the middle of the night, he noticed the glow of a fire far away in the valley. He heard mad howling and singing, and a sound which could have only been the screaming of a tortured woman. When dawn had barely broken, he made his way there to find nothing but a trampled glade and charred bones in still warm ashes. Something sitting in the crown of an enormous oak shrieked and hissed. It could have been a harpy or an ordinary wildcat. The Witcher did not stop to check. Short and sweet. Told you it would be.
Toss a coin to your witcher, O Valley of Plenty.
What's going to be explain Pox on it to me? I'd be glad to do that. So Pox, it's really like a curse. And so Pox, as you might know, is what I believe to be like reference to smallpox, which was like a disease, but it was adopted. And so Pox on it is almost like fuck that or something to that nature. So it's basically like a quick like Pox on it. Like fuck that shit, basically. And hey, it's a gory book you're going to get. This is who I really am. So whatever. So I hope that's helpful to you. Pox on it. It's almost like kill that noise. Fuck that shit. Pox on it. Pox on all your houses. It's like a curse. Short and sweet. So somebody just got. Don't know if it was a harpy or a wildcat. Cute. Etymology. Now that's the study of, I don't know, bodies? Shit, Google that for me. Help me out, chat. Etymology? Maybe origin? I'm guessing. Haven't pulled up Google yet. Etymology. I love words. The study of origin of words. Yeah, I figured that. Okay. Shout out to me then, huh? Bang! Knew it but didn't know it. Yeah, I don't know what the origin is, bro. What do I look like? Encyclopedia Britannica? Get out of here. Get out of here. All right, that was a very short chapter. Everybody ready for the next one? Cool. Can't hear you? Don't matter.
Coin to your witcher, O Valley of Plenty.
I love that shit.
O Valley of Plenty. Oh.
Chapter 4. About midday, while Roach was drinking at a spring, the mare neighed piercingly and backed away, baring her yellow teeth and chewing her bit. Geralt calmed her with the sign. Then he noticed a regular ring formed by the caps of reddish mushrooms peering from the moss.
You're becoming a real hysteric, Roach, he said. This is just an ordinary's devil's ring. What's the fuss?
The mare snorted, turning her head towards him. The Witcher rubbed his forehead, frowned, and grew thoughtful. Then he leapt into the saddle, turned the horse around, and started back, following his own tracks.
Animals like me, he muttered. Sorry, Roach. It turns out you've got more brains than me.
I know. I know. You're like, why are they so short? That's how I feel. It's like, is it necessary? Like, what just happened there? So we roll up on some mushrooms. I mean, you could have just included that in the next chapter, perhaps. I don't know. On the one hand, I love it. On the other hand, hey, these chapters are fire. They gave you like, I don't know, 17 or so pages, and then they felt bad. And they were like, you know what? Let's give them a couple of real just quick jabs in here. Keep it moving. All right, so we are on chapter 5. Hey, there's a shout out. Shout out to my guy. If you're into gaming,
Thank you.
follow my guy, Shadow1311. It's my brother. All right, chapter 5. Let's see how many of these pages we got. Ooh, it's already a little longer. It's not so bad. And then that concludes this episode. So I turn it to the chat. Do you want this? Do you want this? You'll never get this.
That's what she said.
It was a great backstory for your companions, for the champions. All right. I need to know if we're reading chapter 5 or if you want to stop here. This is a new record, by the way. Claps for that. New record being we have streamed for 2 hours and 15 minutes. That is awesome. Hand claps. Yep. Very proud of us. And the question remains, if you would like the next chapter, let me know. Shadow says, I'm cool with reading the whole book. My man, I love you for that. One time. Talk to me, people. Do we want more? Shadow says yes. Ducky says one more, 2 time. All right, bet. Take a
Sip of ale.
And then your final chapter read for the evening. How about that? Okay, here we go. Feeling good about it. Chapter 5. All right, appreciate you being here one more time, Dr. Ducky. Thank you. I mean that sincerely. Chapter 5. And then we all
Bid farewell.
Oh, we're doing one more. You can't stick around for the last chat one time? It's okay. Thank you for your participation. Thank you for being here. I'll likely see you this week at some point. Yeah? All right. The mare flattened her ears against her skull and snorted, throwing up earth with her hooves. She didn't want to go. Just like I don't want you to go. Geralt didn't calm her with the sign. He jumped from the saddle and threw the reins over the horse's head. He no longer had his old sword in its lizard skin sheath on his back. Its place was fitted with a shining, beautiful weapon with a cruciform and slender, well-weighted hilt, ending in a spherical pommel made of white metal. This time, the gate didn't open for him. It was already open, just as he had left it. He heard singing. He didn't understand the words. He couldn't even identify the language. He didn't need to. The Witcher felt and understood the very nature, the essence of this quiet, piercing song, which flowed through the veins in a wave of nauseous, overpowering menace. The singing broke off abruptly, and then he saw her. She was clinging to the back of the dolphin in the dried-up fountain, embracing the moss-overgrown stone with her tiny hands, so pale they seemed transparent. Beneath her storm of tangled black hair shone huge, wide-open eyes, the color of anthracite. Geralt slowly drew closer, his steps soft and springy, tracing a semicircle from the wall and blue rosebush. The creature glued to the dolphin's back followed him with her eyes, turning her petite face with an expression of longing and full of charm. He could still hear her song, even though her thin, pale lips were held tight and not the slightest sound emerged from them. The Witcher halted at a distance of 10 paces. His sword, slowly drawn from its black enameled sheath, glistened and glowed above his head.
It's silver, he said. This blade is silver.
The pale little face did not flinch. The anthracite eyes did not change expression.
You're so like a Ruslucka, the Witcher continued calmly, that you could deceive anyone. All the more as you're a rare bird, black-haired one even. But horses are never mistaken. They recognize creatures like you instinctively and perfectly. What are you? I think you're a Mula or an Alpor. An ordinary vampire couldn't come out in the sun.
The corners of the pale lips quivered and turned up a little.
Nivellen attracted you with the shape of his, didn't he? You evoked his dreams. I can guess what sort of dreams they were, and I pity him.
The creature didn't move.
You like birds, continued the Witcher. But that doesn't stop you from biting the necks of people of both sexes, does it? You and Nivellen, indeed. A beautiful couple you would make, a monster and a vampire, rulers of a forest castle. You dominate the whole area in a flash. You, eternally thirsty for blood, and he, your guardian, a murderer at your service, a blind tool. But first, he had to become a true monster, not a human being in a monster's mask.
The huge black eyes narrowed.
Where is he, black-haired one. You were singing, so you've drunk some more blood. You've taken the ultimate measure, which means you haven't managed to enslave his mind, am I right?
The black-tressed head nods slightly, almost imperceptibly, and the corners of the mouth turned up even more. The tiny little face took on an eerie expression.
No doubt you consider yourself the lady of this manor now.
A nod, this time clearer.
Are you a mullah?
A slow shake of the head. The hiss, which reverberated through his bones, could only have come from the pale, ghastly, smiling lips, although the Witcher didn't see them move.
Alpor?
Denial. The Witcher backed away and clasped the hilt of his swords tighter.
That means you're...
The corners of the lips started to turn up higher and higher. The lips flew open.
Abruxa!
The Witcher shouted, throwing himself towards the fountain. From behind the pale lips glistened white, spiky fangs. The vampire jumped up, arched her back like a leopard, and screamed. The wave of sound hit the Witcher like a battering ram, depriving him of breath, crushing his ribs, piercing his ears and brain, thorns of pain. Flying backwards, he just managed to cross his wrists in the sign of heliotrope. The spell cushioned some of his impact with the wall, but even so, the world grew dark, and the remainder of his breath burst from his lungs in a groan. On the dolphin's back, in the stone circle of the dried-up fountain, where a dainty girl in a white dress had sat just a moment ago, an enormous black bat flattened its glossy body, opening its long, narrow jaws wide, revealing rows of needle-like white teeth. The membranous wings spread and flapped silently, and the creature charged at the Witcher like an arrow fired from a crossbow. Geralt, with the metallic taste of blood in his mouth, shouted a spell and threw his hand, fingers spread in the sign of Quen, out in front of him. The bat, hissing, turned abruptly, then chuckled and veered up into the air before diving down vertically, straight at the nape of the Witcher's neck. Geralt jumped aside, slashed and missed. The bat, smoothly, gracefully drew its wing, circled around him and attacked anew, opening its eyeless, toothed snout wide. Geralt waited, sword held with both hands, always pointing in the creature's direction. At the last moment he jumped, not to the side but forward, dealing a swinging cut which made the air howl. He missed. It was so unexpected that he lost his rhythm and dodged a fraction of a second too late. He felt the beast's talons tear at his neck. A damp, velvety wing slapped against him. He curled up on the spot, transferred the weight of his body to his right leg and slashed backward sharply, missing the amazingly agile creature again. The bat beat its wings, soared up and glided towards the fountain. As the crooked claws scraped against the stone, casing the monstrous, slobbering snout was already blurring, morphing, disappearing, although the pale little lips were taking its place, couldn't quite hide those murderous fangs. The Bruxa howled piercingly, modulating her voice into a macabre tune, glaring at the Witcher with eyes full of hatred, and screaming again. The sound wave was so powerful, it broke through the sign. Black and red circles spun in Geralt's eyes. His temples and the crown of his head throbbed. Through the pain drilling in his ears, he began to hear voices wailing and moaning. The sound of flute and oboe, the rustle of a gale. The skin on his face grew numb and cold. He fell to one knee and shook his head. The black bat floated towards him silently, opening its toothy jaws. Geralt, still stunned by the scream, reacted instinctively. He jumped up and in a flash, matching the tempo of his movements to the speed of the monster's flight, took 3 steps forward, dodged, turned a semicircle, and then, quick as thought, delivered a 2-handed blow. The blade met with no resistance. Almost no resistance. He heard a scream, but this time, it was the scream of pain caused by the touch of silver. The wailing Bruxa was morphing on the dolphin's back. On her white dress, slightly above her left breast, a red stain was visible beneath a slash no longer than a little finger. The Witcher ground his teeth. The cut, which should have sundered the beast in two, had been nothing but a scratch. "Shout, vampire!" he growled, wiping the blood from his cheek. "Scream your guts out, lose your strength, and then I'll slash your pretty little head off." You will be the first to grow weak, sorcerer. I will kill you." The Bruxa's lips didn't move, but the Witcher heard the words clearly. They resounded in his mind, echoing and reverberating as if underwater. "We shall see," he muttered through his teeth as he walked, bent over in the direction of the fountain. "I will kill you. I will kill you. I'll kill you. We shall see." "Verena!" Nivellen, his head hanging low and both hands clinging to the doorframe, stumbled from the mansion. He staggered towards the fountain, waving his paws unsteadily. Blood stained the cuff of his tunic. "Verena!" he roared again. The Bruxa jerked her head in his direction. Geralt, raising his sword to strike, jumped towards her, but the vampire's reaction was much faster. A sharp scream and another sound wave blocked the Witcher from his feet. He tumbled onto his back and scraped against the gravel of the path. The Bruxa arched and tensed to jump, her fangs flashing like daggers. Nivellen, spreading his paws like a bear, tried to grab her, but she screamed straight into his face, throwing him back against the wooden scaffolding under the wall, which broke with a sharp crash and buried him beneath a stack of timber. Geralt was already on his feet, running, tracing a semicircle around the courtyard, trying to draw the Bruxa's attention away from Nivellen. The vampire, fluttering her white dress, scurried straight at him, light as a butterfly, barely touching the ground. She was no longer screaming, no longer trying to morph. The Witcher knew she was tired, and that she was still lethal. Behind Geralt's back, Nivellen was clattering under the scaffolding, roaring. Geralt leapt to the left, executing a short mignonette with his sword so as to confuse the Bruxa gliding towards him. White and black, wind-blown, terrible. He'd underestimated her. She screamed. She didn't make the sign in time. Rather, he didn't make the sign in time, flew backwards until he thumped against the wall. The pain in his spine shot all the way to the tips of his fingers, paralyzed his shoulders, cut him down at the legs. He fell to his knees. The Bruxa, wailing melodiously, jumped towards him. "Verena!" roared Nivellen. She turned, and Nivellen forced the sharp, broken end of a 3-meter-long pole between her breasts. She didn't shout. She only sighed. The Witcher shook, hearing this sigh. They stood there. Nivellen, on widespread legs, was wielding the pole in both hands, one end firmly secured under his arm. The Bruxa, like a white butterfly on a pin, hung on the other end of the stake, clutching it with both hands. The vampire exhaled excruciatingly and suddenly pressed herself hard against the stake. Geralt watched a red stain bloom on her back. On the white dress, though, which the broken tip emerged in a geyser of blood. Hideous, almost obscene. Nivellen screamed, took one step back, then another, retreating from her. But he didn't let go of the pole and dragged the Bruxa behind him. One more step, and he leaned back against the mansion. The end of the pole scraped against the wall. Slowly, as if a caress, the Bruxa moved her tiny hands along the stake, stretched her arms out to their full length, grasped the pole hard, and pulled on it again. Over a meter of bloodied wood already protruded from her back. Her eyes were wide open, her head flung back. Her sighs became more frequent and rhythmic, turning into ruckling wheeze. Geralt stood, but fascinated by the scene, still couldn't make himself act. He heard words resounding dully within his skull, as if echoing around a cold, damp dungeon. Mine, or nobody's. I love you. Love you. Another terrible, vibrating sigh, choking in blood. The Bruxa moved further along the pole and stretched her arms. Nivellen roared desperately, and without letting go of the stake, tried to push the vampire as far from himself as possible, but in vain. She pulled herself closer and grabbed him by the head. He wailed horrifically and tossed his hairy head. The Bruxa moved along the pole again and tilted her head towards Nivellen's throat. The fangs flashed a blinding white. Geralt jumped. Every move he made, every step was part of his nature. Hard learnt, automatic, and lethally sure. 3 quick steps, and the third, like 100 steps before, finished on the left leg with a strong, firm stamp. A twist of his torso, and a sharp, forceful cut. He saw her eyes. Nothing could change now. He heard the voice. Nothing. He yelled to drown the world which she was repeating. Nothing could change. He cut. He struck decisively, like hundreds of times before, with the center of the blade, and immediately, following the rhythm of movement, took a 4th step and a half turn. The blade, freed by the half turn, floated after him, shining, drawing a fan of red droplets in its wake. The streaming raven black hair floated in the air, floated, floated, floated. The head fell onto the gravel. There are fewer and fewer monsters. And I, what am I? Who's shouting? The birds? The words? The woman in a sheepskin jacket and the blue dress? The roses from Nazaire? How quiet. How empty. What emptiness within me. Nivellen curled up in a bundle, sheltering his head in his arms and shaking with twitches and shivers, was lying in the nettles by the manor wall. "Get up," said the Witcher. The young, handsome, well-built man with pale complexion, lying by the wall, raised his head and looked around. His eyes were vague. He rubbed them with his knuckles. He looked at his hands. He felt his face. He moaned quietly, and putting a finger on his mouth, he ran it along his gums for a long time. He grasped his face again and moaned as he touched the four bloody swollen streaks on his cheek. He burst out sobbing, then laughed. "Geralt! How come? How did this? Geralt!" "Get up, Nivellen. Get up and come along.
I've got some medicine in my saddlebags. We both need it.
I've no longer got. I have a Geralt. Why? The Witcher helped him get up, trying not to look at the tiny hands, so pale as to be transparent, clenched around the pole stuck between the small breasts, which were now plastered with wet red fabric. Nivellen moaned again. Verena!
Don't look. Let's go.
They crossed the courtyard, holding each other up, and passed the blue rosebush. Nivellen kept touching his face with his free hand. Incredible! Geralt, after so many years, how's it possible?
There's a grain of truth in every fairy tale, said the Witcher quietly. Love and blood. They both possess a mighty power. Wizards and learned men have been racking their brains over this for years, but they haven't arrived at anything except that.
That what, Geralt?
It has to be true love.
It certainly does. Shout out to Geralt, Nivellen,
And the dead Bruxa.
You know what to do, ladies and gentlemen. If you dug it,
Toss a coin to your witcher, O Valley of Plenty, O Valley of Plenty. Oh.
great stream. I concur, my friend. One more again. And 2 times. Thank you all for being with me today. This was wonderful. A new record, 2 hours and 40 minutes. Shouts out. Bam, bam. Yeah, so I'm sad Chucha missed that, but we'll catch her up. And for anyone else that's still tuning in. That's all we got, ladies and gentlemen. That was a lot. And thank you again. Thank you. And shout out to Dr. Ducky. Thank you for coming by. Thank you for the follow. Shout out to my teammates at H5P. Thank you for being here. You get it all. You get that love. This was a successful unveiling. I need more.
That's what she said.
I need more office tags. But that was great. Shout out and thank you, Shadow. You are my greatest supporter, my closest confidant. I really got into some of the voices there at the end. The little bricks, she was fun, and I still love Geralt, man. He's so great. One more time, thank you.
Thank you. You're far too kind.
Yep. And that's it. When I look back at this stream, I mean, we did a lot. We had a happy Easter welcome back. We had a new release of music. We had 2 new movies to discuss. We had, what's another 50 years, brother? Exactly. We had the reading and then another reading. We took a break. We came back. We did it. I mean, come on. What do you want? What more do you want? I'm really very pleased with this. Come on. That's dope.
O Valley of Plenty. O Valley of Plenty.
Thank you for tossing the coin. So yeah, I don't know what more to say about it other than great job. Thank you. Appreciate that, Chatty. I'm trying to do a little bit here, a little bit there, make it fun for everybody, fun for me. I definitely enjoyed it. And that's a wrap. So now I'm gonna render it, download it, upload it, call it a night. If there's anything that was quite memorable, send me a message. Some of y'all know how to reach me, because that's what we'll use for the social promo. I'm gonna try to generate some awareness. Thank you so much, Ducky, for coming by. Much appreciated. Seriously.
Thank you. You're far too kind.
I'm glad you had a great time, as did I. And on that note, I can say goodbye to everybody, because it's a wrap. That's a wrap. Oh, you stayed, my man. Wonderful. Give you a little love for that. Thanks for sticking around. And I'm going to do this one more time because then I won't have it anymore. Shameless plug. Look at that. Right on cue. If you want to, there's a new record out, but I do encourage you to check out the original first. Lil Wayne featuring DMX, produced by Swiss Beats, Can't Nobody. Listen to that version before you hear mine because I take from the cadence and flow. Though, again, disclaimer, the lyrics and the context is all just jest. It's all just fun. It was meant to be just silly. Enjoy it if you like. If not, it won't hurt my feelings. If you don't like rap and hip hop, it ain't for you. But thanks in advance for anybody listening. All right. Thank you again, sincerely. I appreciate you all. This would not be fun without you. And I'm going to sign off. So this is that. You get one time for the road. And a test in the game.
We testing the game.
And then the close. Good night, Trumpso.